Welcome back. It's 8:41. There is no shortage of high-profile sexual harassment cases these days, and certainly millions involving people we never even hear about.
So what do you do if it's happened to you or someone you know? Well, we've got you covered with that, and here with what you need to know is Fox 29 lifestyle expert Shari.
It's good to see you, Shari.
Yeah, and it's beginning to feel a little empowering here.
Yeah, well, it's about time, right? Let's begin with the high-profile cases that we do hear about, because it seems that they have a lot in common with what applies to average folks like us, what we see in the so-called real world. So what does a sexual harassment situation typically look like?
Sure. Well, oftentimes harassers are serial harassers, so you do see patterns which begin with someone in power. It could be a man or a woman, but because men are more often in power in the workplace still, it's more typically a man, and using that power either to threaten negative consequences or promise positive consequences if you don't go along. As a result, oftentimes there's the creation of a negative, fearful, intimidating type work environment, and oftentimes in a serial type case you'll see girls being abruptly fired or leaving from time to time for sort of inexplicable reasons, and oftentimes, as we've learned, there are other members of senior management that sort of know what's going on. So when that happens, they sort of circle in the cavalry and sometimes make up ridiculous excuses or disparage the person who's just left. And it's this sort of darkness and silence that keeps everyone else quiet, because they think, if that happens to me, I won't be believed, which is the reason why, and Roxanne and I were talking about this before, a third of women are actually harassed in the workplace, sexually harassed, but 75% of us don't say anything.
Wow.
Okay, with that in mind, aren't there laws that protect you so you can speak up? And I say that thinking about these big-name Hollywood stars who claimed they were victims of some of this, and they didn't speak up.
Right. So there are two types of sexual harassment. One is called quid pro quo, and that's where you're sort of bargained with. You know, I'll promise you this, or I won't do this to you if you go along with me. The other is a hostile workplace environment, which is where oftentimes you see comments and innuendos that could sort of create a place where women feel intimidated, and it's interfering with their work. But in order to prove those, Roxanne, number one, you need to show the behavior, and a lot of women are not sure what behavior crosses the line. Number two, you need to show that it was unwelcome, and that's the very first thing. In fact, you're seeing this in the Weinstein case. These guys come out and they say, I never engaged in unconsensual sex. They're not saying they didn't do it, they're claiming the woman welcomed it. And then the last thing is the outcome. And one of the first things that happens in these workplace situations is if you do complain, the perpetrator will find other reasons and kind of try to trigger you. And unfortunately, women often respond to that bait, and they give the employer other reasons to kind of fire them or for adverse consequences.
But if it's so difficult to bring a case like this to court, then what's the regular person to do?
Right. Well, it's challenging. The first thing is document, document, document. Even after you filed the case, continue documenting, because it's illegal to retaliate by firing you afterwards. The more situations you can show, the more patterns you can show. You want to show that this employer knew or should have known that this was existing and didn't take reasonable steps to fix it. You also have to follow your company procedures, because that's one of the first defenses, is you didn't follow procedures. But the reality is that the laws just don't work for women. It's such an uneven playing field. Lawsuits are so expensive, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. The good lawyers want to work for the employers, not the employees, because they know they're going to be paid, and oftentimes employers actually have insurance to pay for situations like this.
Wow.
So what we need to do as women is really eliminate the bystander effect, which is what happens when other women sort of suspect or know something's going on and we say nothing, and become allies when we see a sexual harassment situation. You don't have to be the victim to actually file a complaint. If you see it happening, you can say something, and if it's happening to you, try to find another woman ally in the office who can go with you to through this process as a witness. Much more strength and power. If we all really stepped up, hopefully we'll reach that tipping point, because it's just been way too long. This is ridiculous.
Speak up.
Well said.
Speak up. Thank you.
Sure.
Fox 29 lifestyle expert Shari. Thanks again. Let's send things over to Felicia. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's talk about the weather.